Destroying your happiness, one episode at a time. It's Retronauts. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Retronauts for the week of March 12th, 2009. I'm your host, Jeremy Parrish, and with me here we have...
Shivam Bhatt. I write the RPG column for The Grind every Friday, and I used to work here.
You were an intern?
Mm-hmm.
Were you with 1UP or were you...
I was a 1UP intern
Okay.
long time ago.
Yes. And also returning triumphantly to Retronauts.
I don't know about triumphantly, especially just
raise up
people,
your
but
fists in triumph.
Triumph, yes.
This is a topic close to your heart.
It is, yes. Andrew Fitch, former 1UP editor / contributor / whatever /
localizer
honor.
of Suikoden 5.
Yeah, well,
Suikoden.
partial localizer.
You were a localizer on the game.
A localizer.
Not the sole localizer.
No, there were a few other people.
But that, of course, is why you're both here, because this week we're talking about the Suikoden series.
Yay.
In honor, I guess, of the fact that there's a new Suikoden out next week that has nothing whatsoever to do with any other Suikoden game ever.
Mm-hmm.
So why not celebrate the reboot by talk about all that came before?
Mm-hmm.
You know, I read a rumor or something a long time ago that said that someone found like a text dump or something hidden in one of the game's files that had a plan for all the Suikoden games that went up to like Suikoden 10, and supposedly you were going to find out that Leknot the Seer was secretly the force behind all the events of the games.
That reads like many fanfics I've seen.
Doesn't it? But supposedly it was...
Uber and Peshmerga had to be involved, right?
Well, it has to, dude. Uber and Peshmerga is Suikoden.
Because they're so important to the plot.
Right.
They're really main characters.
Have they been in all the games?
No, just the first three.
Oh, okay.
I guess Uber
was in 4.
Yeah, Uber was a little more... Was he in 4?
He was, I think. Wasn't he in the past?
I don't think he was. I don't know.
I know Peshmerga was.
I tried to block.
Okay.
4 out of my
Anyway,
line.
let's do a little warm up before we dig too deeply into the fanon of the series. So yeah, it's just the three of us this week. No one else likes Suikoden enough to brave talking about it. And I guess Ray, now that he's been on Listen Up, he's just too big.
He's a rock star.
Yeah, he's too big for a little dinky crap ass show like this. So it's been real, Ray. Thanks for contributing through all these years, and don't forget us when you're famous. Anyway, so retro news. Actually, there hasn't really been that much news of late. It's not like the old game scene is really hopping, but
Yeah,
there have
look
been
at
a
all
few
that wonderful WiiWare stuff coming out.
Actually, this week's WiiWare release wasn't too bad. It's Gradius Rebirth, which I'm a little lukewarm on. Some people like it. Ray likes it. I think it's like I kind of get where they're going with it. So Gradius Rebirth, if you're not familiar with it, is basically the Mega Man 9 of Gradius, where they've the developer M4, who does all the emulation work for Virtual Console, went in and said, let's make ourselves a 16-bit style Gradius game, which is kind of weird because that's not really what I associate with the series' golden years. I tend to think more of like the, the first, not necessarily 8-bit, but the the early arcade machines.
Right.
Gradius 2, and I guess Life Force Salamander to a degree.
Right.
Gradius 3, Gradius 4 tend to be kind of less beloved by fans,
Yeah,
but that's sort of what they were shooting
really,
for.
Really hard.
Well, I mean, that's just Gradius.
Yeah.
But Gradius 3 is kind of what this game was shooting for, but it has a lot of elements drawn from like Nemesis on Game Boy
Right.
and I don't know, all kinds of other games. Like I have played most of the Gradius games, but even so, I'm kind of lost by some of the extreme fandom going on in this game.
Yeah, I don't
But
know,
at the same time, go ahead.
To me, they just tend to all blend in my mind.
They
as in,
do.
like, oh, look, it's aliens, and they all.
There's
kind
only
of
so
block
many
in
times you
pink
can blow up a Moai head before.
Right,
you're like,
exactly.
okay, I've blown up this Moai head before.
I think we've depopulated Easter Island now.
Yeah, the natives are feeling kind of sad. All that work did nothing. The problem with Gradius Rebirth for me is that I feel like the same thing has already been done in the form of Gradius Gaiden,
Right.
which was an amazing PlayStation 1 game that never came out in the US until the PlayStation Portable, Gradius Portable.
Yeah, didn't it
released
just
a few
recently
years
come
ago?
out?
It was like 2 years ago, 3 years ago. So it's been a while, but it's fairly recent, fairly fresh in our minds, and that did Gradius meta fan service so much better than Gradius Rebirth. It's I need to decide how to pronounce Gradius or Gradius or whatever. I
You
keep
change
toggling
every
between the two. I don't know what's wrong with me.
I think it's just
Something wrong with
Gradius,
my
right?
brain.
Shane Bettenhausen would have you believe it's Gradius.
Gradius. Okay,
Well,
there
he's
we go.
been known to mispronounce things.
Once or
Yeah.
twice.
Good old Shane. Yeah, so anyway, I kind of feel like Rebirth is decent for what it is for $10.
But
It's
did the
definitely
series
worth
really
buying.
need a
but
rebirth?
It does, but I don't really feel like this is the rebirth that it needs. I feel like Gradius 5 was actually the rebirth that it needs, and that never
That was
really
pretty
went
well
anywhere.
received by
Yeah,
most
it
of the
did.
fans. I mean, I'm not like a huge Gradius fan, but that seemed to be like it. Even though it was like modern, it sort of recaptured the vibe of the previous games. So
Right. No,
essentially
it was also kind of innovative in places too. It did some really cool tricks. Like there was that whole time travel loop thing where you like fight alongside your former self from another stage.
Really?
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. And that was developed by Treasure, so it was
Well, there you go.
it automatically had a built-in fan base, but
Yeah.
it really did it did justice to Gradius while at the same time kind of pushing it in some new directions. So why don't we call Gradius 5 Gradius Rebirth? And this is just like Gradius rehash.
Regurgitated?
Yeah, nice. Anyway, but again, for $10, it's definitely a good play.
I mean, if you need
like
another
shooters,
shooter on the Wii,
there aren't that many side-scrolling shooters on Virtual Console, and
you can always turn your TV.
that doesn't work.
Have you ever actually tried that?
Not my TV. When you have like a widescreen LCD, that's not a good idea.
Yeah, I've got a 46-inch TV at home. I don't think you're going to
I
tate
tried that once. It almost broke the TV.
Yeah. So anyway, I mean, I do feel like there is a dearth of good side-scrolling shooters on Wii, despite the abundance of top-down shooters. So
Like the entire TurboGrafx library.
right, basically. So this is a nice addition. I mean, compared to something like Dead Moon, I'd much rather play Gradius Rebirth. Last week, I don't remember what was on WiiWare, but Ogre Battle: March of the Black Queen was released on Virtual Console, which is an incredibly difficult strategy RPG.
I get Ogre Battle gets a lot of respect from the strategy community. Everybody really likes it. But I think they like it because Tactics Ogre was fantastic and because Final Fantasy Tactics was even better. And
Not according to some people.
Well, they're wrong. I mean, really, Ogre Battle is hard. It's archaic. It's really old school. And, I mean, aside from historical value, can you really imagine a reason to play it again?
I don't know. I think it's an interesting game just because it's so deliberately difficult. Like, not only is it a difficult strategy game to win by any means possible, but to get the best ending, you have to basically tie your hands behind your back and play in impossible mode. Like, if you fight enemies that are weaker than you and win, then your karma goes way down and you're basically a horrible person and you can't get the best ending.
Right.
So to win, you have to take on enemy units that are much higher level than you. And some of that mindset did carry over into Tactics Ogre, where you would go up against enemies that were kind of like your main hero's level
Right.
plus 3.
I mean, the thing is that's so counterintuitive to the nature of those type of games where you want to grind to get your guys up to be able to beat people.
But in a sense, it kind of liberates you because you don't need to grind. There's no point in grinding because it's actually counterintuitive.
So
it's
you're just going to
counterproductive.
die over and over again and do the same damn battle over and over again.
Yeah, and that's not as fun. But I don't know. It's an interesting historical curio. It's valuable because it was an early game by Yasumi Matsuno, who has magically appeared in the news again, which is very exciting.
I look forward to that.
I don't know if I really want to play Mad World, but I will at least, I don't know, watch YouTube videos of its cinemas or something just to see Matsuno's narrative density at work again.
I mean, people seem to like it. It seemed to actually be a good game. So.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, but I mean, it has that kind of like, I don't know,
and maybe it'll
flailing, bloody, violent style, which, like Devil May Cry type stuff that just doesn't, brawlers, it doesn't really do that much for me.
Really? I don't know. I mean,
I like a little more of a measured pace.
Sometimes you just need to play through a game like that, like God Hand or Devil May Cry.
It's funny because I really don't, but I can appreciate that people do.
Do you have any thoughts on Alex Kidd?
I think I already said it in my retro roundup, which is that games like that are released on virtual consoles specifically for the people who owned them when they were, 8 years old, 9 years old. If you owned Alex Kidd games, it's because your parents bought you a Sega Master System instead of the NES you wanted. And you bought Alex Kidd and tried to convince yourself that, yes, this is a worthy substitute for those Mario games my friends are all playing. And so you have this special bond with Alex Kidd. And you can appreciate Alex Kidd for maybe more than what it actually
Sadistic
is.
torture.
Yeah, I mean, it's like he was your only childhood friend and your imaginary friend, and you spent special quality time with him.
You're not speaking from experience here.
No, I'm not.
Okay.
I'm projecting myself. I'm empathizing.
I can understand. I had a Genesis when everybody else had a Super Nintendo. So.
That wasn't a bad thing.
That was a little
the Master
different
System
than the Master
was
System.
Yeah, the Master System had some good games. Don't get angry, Sega fans. It had some good games, but no one really wanted to own a Master System back then. At least not in America. Everyone here owned NESs, and everyone wanted NESs. And I had a friend who had a Master System, and he would come over to my house and see me playing really cool games and be like, "Oh, that's kind of stupid. I don't really want to play a game like that.
We could play Phantasy Star.
I don't like that game. It's not nearly as good as Rambo. Metroid's stupid. You should play Zillion because it's way better. Yeah. There's a snail game on my system. Yeah, you don't have to put a cartridge in. You can just play as a snail. He tried really hard, and I could respect that. Like, you have to convince yourself. It's the same as console wars nowadays when people buy like a PS3 and they try to convince themselves that
it's worth
all those Xbox 360 exclusives. Who cares about those? Those are stupid. I got a handful of Sony games. I got Heavenly Sword. It's okay. I mean, just watch Shane in action, and there you go. Like, Shane is 15 years removed, 20 years removed from the kind of kid who would like Alex Kidd.
But I mean, to be fair, they do have Valkyria Chronicles, which is
I'm not saying there's nothing good. It's just like Master System. There are some good games on PS3. It's just that the momentum seems to be on with a different system. It's kind of the same way as it was, although to a different degree, in the late 80s with the NES Master System.
And now we can all share in the torture with the virtual console.
Yeah, I mean, I think most of us tend to own multiple consoles now because we're adults. But when you're a kid, you can't own multiple consoles unless your parents are much nicer than mine were.
That is goddamn truth, man.
Yeah. So I'm sympathetic. I'm glad that they are releasing Alex Kidd games on Virtual Console because the deprived among us need some love too, and that's fine. But I don't recommend downloading Alex Kidd, so that's just because I'm a snob.
It's for the best.
Anyway, now that we've pissed off everyone who's ever listened to our podcast and no one's actually paying attention anymore, we should talk about Suikoden. So, Suikoden.
The greatest game of all time.
You're not going to correct me and say, I'm sorry, it's Genso Suikoden.
Oh, Genso Suikoden. I don't know. I mean, you can call it what you want, but really, Suikoden 1 and 2 were undiscovered classics on the PS1. And
I discovered them.
Well, I guess they've all been discovered now by the $300 they cost on eBay.
No, I mean, I discovered them back then.
When I discovered Suikoden 1,
I don't think they were that obscure. I think
they weren't that obscure.
They just weren't produced in large quantities.
Yeah, for myself and the people I knew, like from RPG fans who played on like the Super Nintendo, and then we got PS1s, and we were waiting for Final Fantasy VII, like Suikoden, Wild Arms, and for some people Persona. Like those were the RPGs that we played while we were waiting for Final Fantasy VII.
Right. Oh, don't forget Beyond the Beyond.
Oh, exactly. Beyond the Beyond. How could I forget?
Oh,
that?
wait, we should forget Beyond the Beyond.
Well, I don't know. For me, Suikoden was one of those games that was passed around my calculus class amongst my Magic players and my D&D players.
Oh, man.
Dude,
wow.
You gotta try this game out. I mean, it was passed around like...
You're from a different world than me.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't have a PlayStation.
Calculus? What are you talking
Calculus? I was a remedial algebra or something like that.
I went into art so I wouldn't have to take any math classes.
Yeah, well...
Anyway, so the original Suikoden came out for PlayStation really early in the PlayStation's life.
Yeah,
and
96.
Yeah, toward the end of 96. Yeah. So it had been in the US about a year. But by that point, we still didn't have much in the way of RPGs. Like you said, we had Beyond the Beyond, Persona... Vandal Hearts. That was about it.
Yeah, Vandal Hearts, strategy RPG.
Wild Arms didn't come along until the next summer.
Early 97.
It was May 97, I think.
Yeah.
Because it came out at the same time as Symphony of the Night in Japan.
What about Alundra?
I picked up the two games at the same time. And I was like, Wild Arms or the import of Symphony of the Night. And I never really learned to love Wild Arms. Sorry, Wild Arms.
Yeah.
No, Alundra didn't come out in the US until like 99.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, it was much later.
Okay.
It just looked old.
Like Suikoden.
Yeah. Suikoden, I don't think caught on very well at first because I've heard the game was actually originally designed for Super NES, Super Famicom.
Like
yeah, both the first two games, they look like they were designed for the Super Nintendo.
Right. And then I don't know if that's true or not. I haven't been able to find any definitive statements to that effect, but I'd believe it because the game does... I mean, the first Suikoden is like 15, 20 hours long. It's a Super NES length RPG.
I mean, the only thing the first Suikoden does that would possibly take advantage of the PlayStation 1 is a wiggly effect in the beginning when it's turning on the game. But even then, it really does
wiggly effect.
Like the little graphic of the watery thing that's coming on as you're turning on the game, the logos popping up and stuff. Other than that, it really...
Wait, are you talking about like the FMV vid for Konami? But that doesn't have anything to do with the system. That's something they would have added in later.
Right, exactly.
The only effect that
like
it had that says this game was retooled for PlayStation at the last minute is the kind of slight panning effect in battle where there's a bit of a 3D field. Like you wouldn't have seen that on Super NES. But several early PlayStation games did have that. Beyond the Beyond also had that.
Well, that was its selling point.
Right. Both of those games strike me as Super Famicom RPGs that were retooled at the last minute to become PlayStation RPGs.
I believe that. Easy.
And they said, we got to take advantage of this increased hardware, so let's have a slight 3D effect in combat.
Maybe that binoculars item you could get in Suikoden 1 that let you change the camera with the player 2. PlayStation add-on.
But of course, there is one other aspect of Suikoden that couldn't have been done on Super NES, and that was the soundtrack.
Yeah.
Which definitely took advantage of the PlayStation hardware, streaming audio. It had such a good soundtrack, so much better than anything else around at that point.
The soundtrack to the game is still the best selling point for Suikoden.
And even if you go back and listen to it now, like it doesn't really sound dated at all. Like it's still as vibrant as ever, I think.
Yeah. I mean, you listen to the intro theme that plays over the kind of opening FMV.
Yeah.
It's so good. And the finale, the Aventureiros Antes Landsmau or whatever.
Yeah,
I don't know Portuguese, but anyway, that's such a beautiful song, and it really was like kind of one of those early PlayStation games where they said we have to have a vocal theme at the end of our song, but instead of saying,
but instead of like an underwater opera like a Final Fantasy VI,
I was thinking instead of saying let's have a crappy pop song like the end of Symphony of the Night, let's make it this beautiful Portuguese orchestra choir piece. Yeah, let's do that. And they did, and it was gorgeous.
Yeah.
But
and also the sound effects. The sound effects in the first Suikoden especially were really cool. They were like
you mean
straight out
like
of
the duck effect.
no. But like the spell effects, they were like straight out of the D&D cartoon, the Saturday morning cartoon. They were. It was like listening to He-Man or something. It was really, really like not something you expected from an RPG, but it worked really well. It gave this kind of distinct feel that made you say, "Oh yeah, this isn't a Super NES game. This is PlayStation."
I don't know, just
PlayStation generation has begun.
for me, just the fact that each area with its like the European theme and the big castle area and the Asian theme and the small villages, the vaguely Indian theme when you're talking to the gamblers, all of the just different layers of music, the narcissist theme, all of these things. I mean, that's what just kept driving me through this game as we kept playing it.
And that's sort of been like a theme for Suikoden throughout its existence. Like most Japanese RPGs, like fair or unfairly, like they get criticized for like having a cast that appears to be all European or a Japanese interpretation of European stuff. But Suikoden, they really have like every type of people you could think of.
Well,
that's by design.
Suikoden,
apparently.
I think, actually, the Suikoden world really feels like medieval Europe because you have like kind of this core that's Caucasian, Western European.
Sure.
But then you kind of get to the fringes and you have areas that are sort of like Mediterranean, sort of like Middle Eastern. Like you can kind of see where all the connections fall into place.
And
then you have your obscure Asian Oriental traders or whatever.
Right.
And if you go into further games like 3, 4, and 5, I think that's expanded on even more.
Well, that's what I
3
was. Yeah, I was
especially.
thinking with 3, like the Grasslands tribe.
The
Definitely.
first brown hero in a final in a Japanese RPG.
I don't know about that. Barrett was kind of a hero.
No, but,
Yeah, but
Hugo was
the first
really
guy that
Hugo's
didn't
really
suck.
the main protagonist of that game.
In the canon, isn't
Yeah,
he? The flame champion?
yeah, he basically is. So. But I mean, should we give some sort of overview of as to what like Suikoden actually is?
But of course.
All right. Well, obviously, it's Suikoden, the core RPG. You collect 108 people who are marked by the stars.
Right. The
Suikoden
108
characters.
Stars of Destiny, that ties in with Buddhist lore, doesn't it? The number
it's
108 has a great deal of
well,
spiritual significance.
In Buddhism and Hinduism, yeah. But it's a part of the Chinese story, which was Tales from the Water Margin,
Right.
which is
Yeah.
what Suikoden translates to.
Yeah, it's one of the four,
Right, so you'll
four
occasionally-
great Chinese novels.
You'll occasionally find other things called Suikoden. And,
Yeah.
and it's always a bitter shock when you discover, say, this doesn't have anything to do with the video games. It's just some crappy generic anime. It's kind
Well-
of like also Sayuki.
Yeah.
Yeah, Dreams of the
Fushigi
West,
Yuki.
Romance of Three Kingdoms. Like those are like the three main Asian stories that get turned into video games.
Like
Yeah,
the
my
Fushigi
discovery
anime.
of the Suikoden anime, which had nothing whatsoever to do with the video game, was almost as bitter a discovery as when I was in like junior high. Really loved the video game Life Force. Discovered there was a movie called Life Force. Was like, yes, they turned this video game into a movie. No, it was about like, I don't know, some alien virus
How
or
would
something,
you
and it was
do a
really
Life Force
boring.
movie?
Blowing up snakes in space. I mean, what is there not to like?
Moed.
Exactly.
but I mean, even though the story of like Suikoden or however you would pronounce it in Chinese, like that's not really familiar to us. Like for people in Asia, like Korea, Japan, like those stories they're like Shakespeare to them. Like
Yeah, it's just this is historical.
Yeah. I
stuff
mean,
that literature.
I mean, China dominated the region for like 4,000 years, so obviously their stories spread out in a way that
The core story around which pretty much all the Suikoden games are built is that there is a kingdom and you are a ragtag band of rebels, which is kind of the RPG cliche, but it's different in the Suikoden games because you're not just putting together a team of like 5 people who are going to overthrow the empire.
Yeah.
What you do is you put together an army, a massive nation of your own.
I think,
and you find those 108
Right.
people who are marked by destiny. You're always
you're the Tenkai
Star.
Tenkai
Yeah.
Star, right?
But one of the best things about Suikoden is that these 108 guys aren't just all fighters. They aren't just casters or whatever.
Right.
But
There's like
the
some
merchant,
chick who
the
washes
guy who's gonna
laundry.
be your banker, the guy who's going to, I mean, it feels like you're trying to build a nation. You're
Yeah.
trying to get people.
There's a
who-
dude whose only job is to stand there and tell you, "Welcome to Grayskull Castle."
Claude!
I feel so good.
Oh, I love that. Klon, the poor kid.
There are recurring characters throughout the series. Do the recurring characters like Vicky and
Vicky and
yeah,
Jenna.
Gene.
yeah, do they have the same star every
Yes.
time?
Yes.
Okay.
I think there's one exception.
There's in Suikoden 2 when the ninja and Valerie come back, they share a star, which
Right,
is different
right.
from the one in Suikoden 1.
But
And-
only one of them comes back, right?
yeah, you
Depending
can
on
choose
which you
one of the two.
choose, yeah.
And in Suikoden 5, I think that Vicky has a different star because there's also young Vicky and
No, it's 3.
was it
So three is the one with young Vicky.
She was in 5 too, wasn't she?
No, young Vicky's not in 5. Trust me.
Anyway, the
Blends
point
together,
is,
man.
yeah, there's kind of this continuity between all the games in the series,
Right.
except Tear Crease.
Yeah.
And
Deep sigh.
yeah, like on top of that, there's also this other fundamental element of continuity between all the games, which is that the world is built on 27 true runes.
Yeah.
And
Except for Tear Crease.
and each of the
I think everything we say we could
Yeah.
append except Tear
well, Tear Crease
for that.
does have 108 stars of destiny.
And it's got the battle system, which is
No, actually they call them Star Bearers.
the marks of the stars or something. But yeah,
Okay.
the runes.
But anyway,
are
the
fantastic.
runes are kind of like the creation myth,
Yes.
and they're the magic upon which the entire world was founded. And each of the game revolves around your hero coming into possession of one of this 27 true runes.
Right.
Yeah, one or more
And
than
basically,
that.
yeah, coming into possession of a true rune pretty much screws up
Wrecks
your
your
life
life forever.
and everyone around you.
Yeah, I love it. The first game, you get the true rune of destruction, and you kill
The soul
Soul
eater.
Eater.
yeah, the soul eater, and you kill your best friend. The second game,
Well, you don't really kill him.
well, he
Kind of
eaten by
dies.
the soul
You kill
eater.
your dad.
Ah, yes, you kill your dad. In
Spoilers.
Suikoden
and then your
2,
best, and then your kind of weird manservant, your curious manservant,
your
who really loves making stews for you,
among
is eaten by
other
spores.
things, yeah. That, by the way, was the first time. I mean, everybody talks about Eris's death affecting him. No, man, Gremio's death is what got me when I was in high school and I was playing that game. And because you care about all these characters. I mean, the core group of characters in Suikoden 1, they do such a good job with the dialogue of building this family that you really feel like when he dies, you're like, God damn it, he died. How can I bring him back? Unlike Eris, it's just like, oh, she loves someone and has flowers. And,
But unlike Final Fantasy 7, you can bring him back.
yeah, exactly. And it's awesome.
Yeah.
And you don't have to go talk to the general in Wall Market or anything.
Yeah, I mean that's typical for Suikoden. Like if you get all 108 stars and you do certain things, you can get the special ending where sometimes someone who dies can come back.
Right.
Well, if you get all 108 in Suikoden 2, you can bring the hero from Suiko 1 into that game, and then he just dominates.
Well, if you get 108 in the first Suikoden,
Ah, yes.
then when you play Suikoden 2, you can recruit
That's the other thing about
Tyr
the
and
games. The
Gremio.
first 3 games let you import your save file in, which would let you do things like get bonuses, bonus characters, bonus story elements. And almost always it was totally worth your time to do so. And then they stopped it in 4 because it took 150 years before the other games.
That doesn't matter. They should have come up with something.
I know.
It was a tradition lost. Very sad.
Well, I think in the case of 4, they were trying to start from anew and didn't really know what they were doing.
Right. So, I mean, the Suiko series overall has had really great big meta themes over it. Like, the first one is you're a small group of heroes trying to overthrow an evil empire. The second one is a battle between 2 best friends who are
Except
almost
it's not
like
really
brothers.
even evil. It's just kind of
Misguided or-
Misguided.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. For people who have never played Suikoden series and don't like the cliche Japanese RPG plots of ragtag heroes and big.
For one
demon-
thing, you're
big
never
demon
saving
kings.
the world. You
Yeah,
never
you're,
ever.
you're
save
saving
the world.
well, you're not even saving. It's like a battle between 2 separate factions in a particular section of the world. It's just like
Right.
a localized war.
But,
Right.
I mean, it's
and
more-
there are occasional elements of okay, this person's evil. They're kind of bad. Like in
Luca
Suikoden
Blight.
2, Luca Blight,
Luca Blight.
is evil. He's a despicable human.
But there are reasons for
But
that.
he's not the final boss.
Yeah.
And even once he's dead, his empire continues to chug along.
Yeah.
And it's not really evil. It's just that's just how the empire is.
just happened to be a
It's just the
tyrant
kingdom.
ruling
Right.
it.
Yeah.
But I mean, Luca Blight, when that scene in the beginning, when he burns down that village, makes that lady act like a pig, and then slices her down, is quite possibly the evilest thing I've ever seen in a JRPG. Hands down. I mean, that guy was a vile,
I'd be inclined to say
sadistic
he's
bastard.
the worst Japanese RPG villain I can think of.
He's a bastard, dude.
He is.
But he did witness his mother's rape at the hands of someone, so that sort of
Yeah, take
set
that,
him on
Final
that
Fantasy.
course.
I don't see you raping Cloud's mother.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's not go there. But no, that is the thing about Suikoden is that it tends to be more nuanced.
Yeah.
It tends
Right.
to be less,
Blatant.
let's go save the entire planet from a single problem. And it tends to be more about specific conflicts, internecine conflicts, and
Right.
sort of taking a side and.
It might not be the right side either. You're just kind of on this side. You're thrust into the side.
Yeah.
Right, there's always a lot of moral ambiguity, and you kind of have to ask, am I doing the right thing here?
I always thought that was really fun that in these games you would sit there, and especially Suikoden II, which is just such an epic game and so many levels, having to sit there and say, well, am I really fighting for the right people? I mean, obviously Luca Blight's the wrong guy, but the villains on his side aren't bad people. Am I killing their villages?
Once Luca Blight is out of the picture, then all of a sudden that entire kingdom, which kingdom is that? The Highland?
Yeah.
Yeah, the Highland Kingdom becomes...
No, Jostin.
Oh, Jostin, that's right, Republic, right. They become much more, much less about evil and much more like people going about their business.
Right. It's like, am I just taking the place of the evil guy by being my army is now dominating everybody, or what's going on? Suikoden 3, though, really puts that up when you're like taking in Suikoden 3, you had 3 main heroes, and each of their viewpoints was a different line of game. But one of the heroes, Chris, was invading the village of the other hero, Hugo. So you would see the same scenes from both sides and be like, well, now the evil imperialist Europeans are coming to dominate my town. And the evil imperialist Europeans are like, we're just trying to pacify these vile elements of the grasslands and keep the world safe for everybody. And you have to decide, well, who do I want to support as a player? And eventually you pick, your...
Now, when you played through Suikoden 3 for the first time, like, which character did you pick first?
Well... I saved right before that and picked them all.
Yeah.
But no, I definitely picked Hugo first because
you're brown, and you're like, power to the brown people.
it's a cliche, but yes, because
I know you, Shivam.
well, I mean, the thing is, though, it's so cliche to have the European imperialist bastard as the hero of the game. I want to see what it would be like to have the tribal little kid whose parent, just from the village, just to feel like...
Really? Because I feel like in a lot of RPGs, Japanese RPGs especially, usually the knight-type characters tend to be inverted, and they tend to be kind of the villains. And I think a lot of that has to do with Japanese history and their relationship with the West.
Oh, maybe my context is different.
Maybe.
No, but when I played through that the first time, I picked Chris Lightfellow from Zexen, yeah. And like they were just telling me, okay, invade this village, and I didn't think anything of it. Like I didn't feel like I was doing anything bad. Like, okay, you're telling me to do this, I'll do it. And it wasn't until like I played through Hugo after that I saw, okay, I can see how what she's doing is not that great.
I just thought that was such a cool element of the game that really I wish had been picked up on more.
The problem, the Trinity sight system, which is what they call like the 3 viewpoints of the game, it gets criticized by the fans. Well, okay,
no, that's fine.
You can play as a dog.
That's what they call it in Japanese. But I
know Japan their RPGs have to have some kind of system with its own ludicrous name.
Yeah, every Tales game, even though it's like basically the same battle system, it's like
linear motion battle.
Yeah, linear motion battle, whatever. But I totally forgot what I was going to say.
The Trinity sight system gets criticized by fans.
Oh yes, it's criticized by fans. But I think part of that is because of the world map. Like you have to go back and forth and always do the same thing over and over.
I don't know.
Like,
see, Suikoden 3 had my favorite soundtrack. Like the Grassland theme is my favorite overall song in Suikoden.
Oh, it's fine if you're.
So I didn't
it's
mind
fine
it.
to hear, but I mean, you don't want to do that when you're walking back and forth all over the place.
Right. I mean, but I thought that just the way the game was set up, especially where you could get like the little dog and run around your castle, and the others. I mean, they call it Trinity, but you could really get 6 character viewpoints to play with, and I thought that it was so different from every other RPG I'd played that it was just worth my time. I know a lot of people don't like 3 because Suikoden 2 is the best PlayStation RPG, but
wow, you just said my words for me. Thanks.
Oh, well, I know you have a lot to talk about, but I loved Suikoden 2 and 3, and a lot of people think that I'm too biased against it, but that game is so good.
I think 3's problem was that it came after 2. Like,
Yeah.
I think if
3's problem is that it came after 2, and it was a PS2 game. And when they went to PS2, the developers said, okay, we need to start making this look like a next-gen game. We need to make it fully 3D. We need to get rid of all the
charm out.
yeah.
And it's not that I have, a bias against 3D games, because there are plenty of 3D games I like. Like, I can't imagine playing Final Fantasy 12 in 2D. That would just be stupid.
Wasn't that Revenant Wings?
Yeah. But no, that isn't even comparable. But the problem is that so many of the things that I liked about Suikoden 2 had to do with its almost archaic presentation, because they put so much detail into the game world. I mean, if you just glanced at it, it looked like it was kind of this brown gray world. But then you really paid attention and you realized that every backdrop had amazing detail. You'd go into like a storeroom in town or something, and every little sack of flour was drawn with meticulous detail, and the sprites were so expressive.
The character portraits are so beautiful in that game.
Not even the character portraits, but the actual in-game sprites. They were so much more animated than just about any other game, except maybe Final Fantasy Tactics.
Right.
Like they had so many different varied animations. There were so many throwaway animations, like the beginning sequence where you see the
Nanami
montage.
comes around out.
Well, no, the montage where it's like showing flashbacks of Joey and the hero's childhood, and there's all these animations that you only see in that montage.
I remember,
but they're still there.
Just recently, I played through Suikoden 1 and 2 again because we were doing something on a message board I'm on, and I remember seeing at the beginning of Suikoden 2, the hero's sister comes running out, and she's waving her arms and doing all this stuff and beating things. And in that one scene, she's got more animation than the entire Suikoden 1 game does. And it's just gorgeous to look at. The first time you see it, yeah.
I think like the character you're referring to is Nanami, and like even through the horrible translation of the game, like the expressions and just how they managed to get her to get you to care about her, even with a horrible translation.
I felt much more empathic toward her than I did toward Gremio. I mean, Gremio was a good character, but at the same time, I was like, you're a little weird and obsessive.
Yeah.
But Nanami, that was like your little sister, and when she is killed, that's just like you have to go find all 108 stars, because you can't let Nanami die. That's just not thinkable.
My copy of Suikoden 2 was bugged, and it was one of the first copies that Konami released with all errors in it. And I got to the battle with Joey at the end where you can not kill him and save Nanami and get the right ending, and it wouldn't let me. It wouldn't let me do that choice, and he just kept giving me, but thou must. And for 45 minutes, I tried my best not to kill him because I couldn't do it, because I couldn't.
I admire your tenacity.
And then I went and burned a copy of the game and did it the right way.
Good man. But it wasn't just the animation that I liked about Suikoden 2's 2D nature. It was also just the speed of the game. I mean, it's, your traditional Japanese RPG, which means that you're fighting invisible enemies every 5 steps.
Sure.
But the battle system went so quickly.
Yes.
Yeah. 1 and 2
it loaded
definitely.
up instantly. You fought through, your battle was over in the time that it took for a battle in Suikoden 3 to load.
And then you had a horrible partner system.
It's the same problem with, something like the difference between Final Fantasy 6 and 7, but it was just so much more pronounced in Suikoden 3. And honestly, I made it an hour into Suikoden 3 and said, this is not what I want to play. Like, just walking around town with Chris was infuriating, because it's exactly the same stupid town as you would walk around in Suikoden 2, but it takes 5 times as long to walk around just to talk to your stupid NPCs and get the same stupid information that's spread across 20 different NPCs that could just be given to you in a single, here's a briefing or something.
Yeah.
But no, you have to walk around and talk to all these stupid people through this big open town, and I just wasn't in the mood for it.
Yeah, that's the biggest problem with
compactness of Suikoden 2.
The later games is
My
that
kingdom for a run button.
the whole point is to go around the world and recruit people, but if you have to walk around each town and like go through all these corridors, like it's a lot more difficult in like a 3D world.
Well, that's something that really makes Suikoden 2 amazing, is that it's a good 40-50 hour RPG.
Right.
But it's not padded out like most 40-50 hour 3D RPGs are. You actually have 40 to 50 hours of content in the traditional 2D style, whereas most 2D RPGs tend to be 15-20 hours long. This was just an enormous game, and the story kept going. It was sprawling, but it never got tiresome.
And
there was always a reason to keep going. There was always a compelling cause to pursue and people to find and people to save.
And one of the things that always interested me about 2 was that if you were a speedrunner, you were also rewarded because you could run through with the Clive side quest, which required you to do certain things in like 20 hours time to get to the end to find out this guy's storyline. And that meant that if you played it again and did all the 50 hours worth of stuff and then played it again and did the super fast one, you still had it was worth your time.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you think about the Iron Chef side quest in that game?
I didn't really appreciate it at the time because I wasn't familiar with Iron Chef. But
I don't think anyone was.
If I went back, I know one or two people
and
who were familiar, but like it was lost on most people. If I went back and played it now, I'd be like, hell yeah, that's so awesome. I'm just waiting for it to come out on PSN.
Yeah, people keep begging them to bring back those type of games in every subsequent release, and they
Suikoden
don't.
2's localization was so bad, though.
It was like there was an entire town where no one has English
Text.
dialogue. It's just symbols because they forgot to change it from Unicode.
My favorite is you're supposed to recruit this singer, and you have to listen to her sing the song, and she sits
just
and her
silent for
mouth
5
just
minutes.
gapes open and closed because I guess the song is in Japanese and it never.
Yeah.
I remember I got the Suikoden 2 soundtrack and I heard this song and I'm like, I don't remember this from the game, and then I was like, oh, it was from that 5-minute long block of nothing.
Right. And that's probably why we won't see it on PSN because it was kind of a raw, incomplete localization. I mean, they really rushed it out, and I don't know why because it came out like the same week as Final Fantasy VIII.
Yeah,
hey,
and
way to instantly doom your RPG.
that has been
obsolescence.
Suikoden's curse over the past like 4 entries. Is every time they have a new Suikoden, it comes out against some juggernaut, gets its ass kicked.
Yeah, I mean, if they had waited a month, given it a little more polish, and not released it the same day or the same week as Final Fantasy VIII, probably would have done okay for itself.
Yeah.
But as it was, there was a time where you could find remaindered copies of Suikoden 2 on sale for like $15. Just trying to same with like Panzer Dragoon Saga. It's these rare RPGs from that generation that at the time no one gave a crap about because we were inundated by RPGs, and the publishers didn't know how to promote them and sell them.
And Suikoden 2 had like game-ending bugs in there. There was a point where you're supposed to get Flick to come out of university to progress the plot, but instead what happens is he never comes out, and all of the named NPCs in the game disappear. Anybody with a face that you can collect disappears completely.
There was one bug that I encountered where it was in the town, I think, of South Window, and you're trying to do something with Victor. It's like you're sleeping and people come in and try to kill you at night or something. Or there's a fire or something. I can't remember exactly what, but like you're in the house and you have to like leave, but for some reason it wouldn't leave the house screen, and so somehow I broke out of the layer masks for the for the screen, and I started walking around the overall world map, and I discovered that all the interiors of that town were like one big screen, and they were just like different sections, and I could walk from room to room of disconnected houses by walking around in the exterior area. But of course I couldn't make the game go forward, so I had to reset and try it again, and it ran. But yeah, what a mess of a localization.
And the problem is back then Konami didn't have a North American localization team or anything like that. It was, I don't know who translated it, but I mean it was just like, I assume it was done in Japan by someone who didn't know English very well.
All this makes the localization quality of Metal Gear Solid that much more miraculous, because how do they manage to pull that off when everything else they did was a big pile of crap?
And it also makes Suikoden 2's epic success so like hard to believe. Like, how do people love this game when it's so
when they can't understand it?
Yeah,
it's not that you can't understand the game.
But there are parts that you can't understand.
Like
there were no parts that I did not understand, but the localization is awfully sloppy. There's like 20 exclamation points every time someone shouts.
When I went back and played it in Japanese, I was like, wow, this is what it is.
It's infuriating that the PSP re-release of Suikoden 1 and 2 didn't come to the US.
You hear me, Konami? Bring that crap to America. You have no reason not to.
I've heard that wasn't Konami's decision.
Well, I think one of them. I'm not sure how much I can say, but I mean, we all know that Sony, especially at the beginning of the PSP's life, they had like a problem with direct PS1 ports, and I know for a fact that they rejected it. So
I'm crying on the inside.
yeah.
But it wasn't a direct port. They added like a music player. Come on.
And they made the game widescreen.
They did also reconfigure the entire aspect ratio of the game so that it took advantage of the full PSP resolution instead of just, shrinking it or rescaling it or whatever.
I believe that at some point it was approved by SCA finally, but by that point, like, it sold horribly in Japan, and so I think the team had moved on to something else. So I think that they just didn't want to take the investment to localize it. So I think that was what happened there.
But the
Why
thing is,
does
Konami
Konami
of
hate
Japan.
us?
Konami of Japan loves Suikoden so much. I mean, they've got Suiko 1 through 5, obviously, Suikoden Tier Crease, 2 Suiko Gaiden text games, Suikoden card stories, and a fully printed CCG, plus about 25 full magazine-sized books of Suikoden lore with all of the, runes and the history and the characters and the world map. I mean, seriously, if
Not
I
to mention all the soundtracks.
and yeah, I've got 15 friggin' Suiko soundtracks at home. I love them.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, I've got Liti Oriente, Celtic 1 through 3, Asian.
Anyway, you have a lot. You have a lot.
But it just the game is so loved by Konami. That's why I wonder why they just wrecked it.
I think the thing is,
tactics,
I think it's loved by a certain segment within Konami, but I mean, it doesn't sell great. In fact, like 3, 4, and 5 in both America and Japan, they subsequently sold less and less and less. So I think that there are a lot of people at Konami Japan, Konami in America who do care about the series, but when you're trying to justify it, to corporate, if you say, this game only sold like 100,000.
That's probably a lot why Tier Crease has nothing to do with the other 5 then.
Yeah.
Right, but I don't know if that's the right approach to take either. What they've done is basically created in Tier Crease, the DS game that's coming out next week, a Suikoden game that doesn't really have any connection to the other Suikodens, except that it has the 108 Stars of Destiny.
Well, and the battle system?
And the battle system is similar.
Yeah.
Is it a 6-character battle system?
It's a 6-character. No, it's 4 characters.
So it's like 4.
So it's okay.
But they're arranged in the kind of feel that...
Right, the rows.
Yeah.
Yeah, it feels vaguely like Suikoden 1 and 2, but
well,
not
I mean, when
quite.
they attack at the different times the way Suikoden 1 and 2 did.
Yeah.
Just kind of staggered.
Yeah, and it's got that feel. Like, when I played it, I instantly recognized it as
So you have
Suikoden
like
1.
S, M, and L attacks?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
And if an enemy attacks you and you dodge, you can sometimes attack them back the way you could in Suikoden 1. You can attack multiple people if you've got a high enough level over.
Is it as fast as the first two Suikodens?
I don't think it's quite as fast, but it's definitely faster than 3, 4, 5.
Yeah. I mean, it's...
The thing is, as an RPG, it's not bad. As a Suikoden game, especially for like big fans, which are really the audience for it.
That's really the only people buying Suikoden games at this point.
Yeah.
I mean, what it brought to mind was that the DS right now has like Final Fantasy games and Dragon Quest games, which feel like NES and Super NES RPGs brought back. This is like finally feeling like a PlayStation RPG that's been brought back to, despite the Canadian anime voice acting it's got.
Horrible.
But the soundtrack to it is really good. I mean, I really enjoyed it. I just wish there was more Suikoden about the story, about the... There's not even runes in it. How
the
do you
story
without runes?
Well, I don't even care about that. As long as it sort of matches, the epic scale of, most of them except for 4. But
epic, but not global.
Yeah,
that's kind of the weird.
It still is not a global conflict, but it's just not the characters and the whole plot. It's just this convoluted multiple worlds thing. It's just
it's
not
like Sliders.
Yeah, it's not on the level of. Even I would say 4. Like it's
4's story was so bad though. I mean, the boss of 4 was a giant tree.
So I love Final Fantasy V. Its final boss was a giant tree.
Yeah, but I
threw coins at it until it
trees
died.
and rune cannons, and I mean, Suikoden 4 and Suikoden Tactics. I remember I interviewed them, the Suikoden guys there, and I was like, "Why did you pick this game of all the Suikoden games? You could have made a tactic game from 2, and it would have been epic and beautiful. I mean, the battle system in 2, the big wars, that pretty much was a tactics game, but Suikoden Tactics was an awful, awful strategy game."
So yeah, actually, I think I'm probably like a lot of early Suikoden fans in that I played the first two and loved them, and then the third one kind of left me cold, and I stopped following the series after that. So why don't you tell me about the games that I missed out on? What's up with 4 and 5? You keep taking 4's name in vain.
Okay, well, Suikoden 4, first off, the game takes place 150 years before the Suikoden series.
Right.
It was made by...
That was basically because
You're hanging with Ted, right?
Yeah, you
Like, what's up, Ted?
you meet your
How's that
best
soul
friend
leader?
from the first game.
basically why they did that was because the creator left
Yeah.
during production of Suikoden 3. So they basically said, okay, if this dude's not here, then we need to go back and we can still do Suikoden, but we can't really continue the story
See,
as it was.
That's the thing. Suikoden, the series, the story has been progressing in time up till 3, and 3 is the farthest the timeline has gone. And we're understood to believe that the story will end after that when these other two characters meet and do things. Suikoden 4 takes place 100 years in the past, and it's awful. You're this... Basically, you're a hero on a boat, and you're going around this island chain to try to do things and fight these pirates and destroy this tree that's been sucking root.
But I like the Wind Waker.
Right, but you don't like having every 3 seconds to stop and fight a random battle that takes 5 minutes to load.
And also the collision detection when you're sailing is horrible. Like I swear to God,
and
like
it's
when
a featureless sea of
when
just
they told
empty
me
gray.
to go to the first island to do whatever quest they have you do, like
and you're bouncing off it on the
took
map.
me like an hour and a half to get to that island because I just kept bouncing off the island. I didn't understand why it was bouncing me off this island.
That's happened to me too.
And I finally figured out, okay, this just had horrible collision detection. Like I have to navigate. This is like another challenge. Like I have to navigate my way through the horrible collision detection and finally land on
And
the
there's
island.
no way to speed up that boat except to hold like R2 or
Yeah,
whatever. But it's just... God, it was so bad. I mean, the soundtrack was fantastic, but it sounded like Italian accordions and everything like that, but it was awful. And then they turned it into a tactics game, which looked like...
Yeah, but what was so bad about the Suikoden 4 story?
Okay,
There's
well...
like the angry Sun Queen or something.
You
and
don't-
she's
No,
all like,
that's 5.
But 5 was... 5 story
We'll get to
was
5
interesting.
later.
That was interesting. But 4, the main character was...
They're
this-
specifically just pirates and merchants.
Yeah,
it's,
and-
it's sort of like how like trade federations or whatever are evil in.
Oh, it's like the Phantom Menace.
Yeah. It's sort of like that. Where
the
like,
real problem is that you don't care about the main character. And
you don't care
like
about the
the
main
Phantom
character or the antagonist or
Yeah,
anyone really.
or any of his buddies, any of his friends, nothing. I mean, that's the thing about a Suikoden game. You like the main character. You care about him, his family, his relations. This guy was a sad-faced, pouty, silent bastard who did nothing. He had 2 swords. He just kind of sat and wiggled them. You didn't know if he was a guy or girl.
He wore horrible short shorts.
Ugly clothing. I mean,
Like,
But shorts are comfy and easy to wear.
disturbingly short shorts.
it was just, I mean, that guy was, and his rune was like sadness. And it
He had the emo rune.
yeah, it did damage to other people and to you. So it was like tactically useless. But it was just, man, that guy was sad, and I didn't want to play his game. At least Suikoden 5 was... Suikoden 5 links to...
I keep hearing that it's a return to form. For
because
the series.
it takes
It basically is Suikoden 2
it's a
redone.
prequel to... No, not quite.
It's sort of. There are
Don't
a
get my
lot
hopes
of...
up there, buddy.
It is a prequel to 2.
There are a lot of elements of 2 and 5, like a lot of homages.
One of the things that really got me about the Suiko series' depth and connection is that the hero of Suikoden 5, or one of the main guys of Suiko 5, he is in the manual for Suikoden 1.
George Prime.
Yeah,
It's like,
George
yeah.
Prime. And you realize that, holy crap, there's all these epic connections between these games, and they go through the effort of trying to flesh out these characters through the series. So if
Well,
you follow it,
one of
it's
the
worth
games
your
let you
time.
play as Stoltheim Reinbach the
Yes,
first, right?
That's 4.
Yeah.
Or, oh, well, forget it then.
Yeah.
Nice
and-
try, but you're not going to fool me like that, Konami.
No, but if Tierkreis is like spitting in the fans' general direction, like with like no references to previous games, like 5, like having George Prime, having Lorelei, Killy,
Lorelei,
all,
Killy.
all these characters that people love,
and locations
Yeah.
and everything.
from 2, the Queen of Mephalena.
Yeah, I mean, and the story was great. The music was great. They talked a lot, though, and I didn't quite like the voice acting in that game.
I had nothing to do with that.
Yeah, well, it's not your fault. But, man, there was a lot of text in that game. But it just... Suikoden 5 was a lot of fun to play. It had a lot of cool formations, a lot of cool battles. And by the time you finish it, you felt, wow, I did something that was worth my time. Which is more than you could say for 4 Rhapsody.
I'd say all of them are worth playing except for 4. Like
Yeah.
you can skip 4. You don't need to, try
And
to stealth
because
violence
the
with horrible
producer to
collision
4 was
detection.
so nice to me. I mean,
That's what happens when you make a crappy game. You have to really kowtow to the press. Please don't hate me for this terrible game that I've created.
I used to have a map of the entire Suikoden world on my wall that I'd pieced together with like printouts and stuff. And I remember at the intro in TGS a couple years ago when they were talking about Suikoden 5 being released, I was talking to them and I was like, wow, dude, I'm such an uber fan of the game. I had a Suikoden branded
No, you?
iPod. Konami released in Japan an iPod Nano that had the Suikoden, any of the true runes on it you could have, and I got the rune from 4 because it looked coolest. I wish I'd gotten Hugo's rune. It's my forever secret shame. But I took it there and I brought it to them and I showed them, and I had like all the soundtracks on my iPod and everything. And the dude was so impressed. He sent me this giant box with the full CCG, like all the toys that had come out, and I was like, holy crap, I'm a Sicko fanboy.
But the thing is, for 5, like they brought in a scenario writer who worked on Skies of Arcadia. So there was a reason that game was higher quality story-wise and narration-wise than 4. Because 4 was like Juko Kawano, was like an art person. Like, you don't want to put someone like that in charge of characters and story. So.
The story was boring.
Yeah. The one problem with 5, though, is it was outsourced to Hudson. So technically, it's it doesn't look as good as 4. There are some problems there. Some of the,
Really? The costuming was great. And I don't know.
Some of the design, but as far as like the technical execution of their vision, I don't think it was as high as it could have been. So, but I mean, as I've said, like I worked on the localization for that game, and one thing that frustrates me is I never got to play through it like as an actual fan, like because I was a huge fan of Suikoden even before like I worked at Konami, and I tried to get on the localization of Suikoden 4. Thankfully, I did not.
One of those things you'll look back and
I got to Konami just after Suikoden 3 wrapped up, so like I know what went on with that project. Basically, people complain about inconsistencies between Suikoden 3 and Suikoden 2 as far as like terminology. What went on there was
what do you mean?
Like, for example, like they call like the Flame Champion instead of the Fire Hero, things like that. There are a lot of inconsistencies. They call the Howling Voice Guild the Roaring Brotherhood.
Oh, right.
Yeah, there are all sorts of inconsistencies there. Basically,
wait, so the Flame Champion was actually referred to in Suikoden 2?
Yeah, as the Fire Hero.
I don't remember that at all.
Yeah, it's in one of the old books. Like a lot of the terminology that was used. See, that's what most of the games have done. Like they'll introduce certain elements in where like you'll look and you'll see certain references to certain countries or whatever, and then they'll go and focus on that country in the next game.
Yeah.
Kind of reminds me of the Evilise games that
it is very it's very similar.
It kind of reminds me in the sense that it was really kind of a person's vision. It seems like, and there were all these ideas for links and connections and this grand overarching mythology.
Right.
And then that person left, and then the company said, well, we've still got a viable franchise here. Let's keep it going, even though we have no idea what's supposed to happen.
Yeah, that's kind of exactly what it feels like with 3. I don't think we're ever going to see the true end of Suikoden again.
Okay, so it really was Leknot, and
but
she's behind everything.
But the problem with the inconsistencies was that when you're dealing with like Japanese developers, some of them are like very receptive, and some of them are not. So if you say, "Hey, this should be this in English," some of them will say, "Oh, we trust you." Some of them will say, "Oh no, even though we're Japanese, we know what it should be called." And so that's what happened there.
Yeah, I have a friend who has done localization work, and
John Hardy?
I'm not going to say who it is. Just for a long running series, and took a lot of care to make the most recent installment really, really good. And apparently the producer of the game in Japan was very upset because he realized, wait, all the other games we've done have been really bad? And yeah, actually they have. They've been really bad, and this is what it looks like when it's good. No, they don't really appreciate that.
That was one of the things that I really liked working on 5 was, even though I wasn't there on 3, like the developers on 5 were very receptive to like anything that we said. Okay, this should be this should be that. You know, they didn't say, oh, like, no, this is what it should be in English. The only problem was like there's a character named Belkut. There's certain other characters like that where they're supposed to be named after certain things. He's actually named after like the Russian word for hawk, so it should have been Berkut, but they didn't give us that information until like after we had named the characters, after we had recorded the voices. So just things like that where like people will complain, oh, this should have been this. But
Suikoden's full of those.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, how are you supposed to know when you look at katakana and say, oh, clearly this is a Russian word that I've never heard in my
That's
life?
see, because the onus is on the Japanese developers to provide that context.
Right.
Because a lot of times, you're lucky if like the person who works on the game is a fan of the series. You're lucky.
Well, I mean, the thing is, in like Suikoden 2, you ran into this too, with like character names were long in Japanese because you could fit the kanji in there, but then you in English you get Freed Y instead of
Right.
Yeah.
Fred Yamamoto or whatever the
Yeah.
hell his name is supposed to be. Oh man, I want to go back and play Suiko 2 now. It's
Yeah,
Shiro, the
it was a
greatest
great
wolf
game.
character ever.
So our general prognosis on the future of Suikoden is pretty dire.
Well, I know. I conducted an interview with like the producer of Tierkreis, or Tierkreis actually. That's the correct German pronunciation.
Tierkreis.
Yeah,
So we're
it
all
means
German
Zodiac.
Oh, it's German.
Yeah,
I didn't
it's
know.
German for Zodiac. It makes sense if you play the game. It does relate to the plot of the game, sort of. But I mean, he was sort of vague as to whether they're going to go back to it. I think that they want, to show Konami corporate that the
brand is viable.
the brand still can sell, but the problem is, as we said, like the people who will buy the game, are sort of boycotting this game.
I hope not, because really, the anime cutscenes there are really pretty. The game's backgrounds are beautiful. I don't like the sprites because they look like really terrible Final Fantasy VII, like the PC version.
Right.
I mean, they look ugly as hell, but the backgrounds are pretty, and the game it's catching me. It's getting me in. But
I would love to see them take the style of Seventh Dragon by Sega, which I've been playing like religiously for the past couple of days, and make a Suikoden game with that style of art, where you have very simple little sprites on. They're on 3D backgrounds, but the 3D is very subtle. It's even more subtle than like Pokemon Diamond. But it does make a difference because it does give you kind of this like parallax shift as you're moving around. But then the texture work in that 3D is really beautiful. It's almost like watercolor.
Right.
And the effect is like a modern rendition of a 16-bit RPG. Like it feels contemporary and fresh, but at the same time, it has all the strengths of the classic games, which is that it moves really quickly and there's not a lot of nonsense and a lot of filler. Like if they could make a Suikoden that kind of drew from that approach to portable gaming, I think that's viable on DS. You don't have to make a glorious looking DS game, just as long as it's nice looking and has a consistent, sensible style.
And Konami's concern is that like people are gonna be intimidated by they have this huge world that's been in every game, and newcomers are not going to be able to access it. But like. Any of the games you play, you can get it. I mean,
but that's
the most successful Final Fantasy game ever, possibly the most successful RPG ever made, had a 7 at the end. And you know what? People bought it anyway because it looked cool and it was interesting and had a lot of hype to it.
You know what the thing is about Suikoden is the lore is so deep and detailed, and there's so much you can do and so many places you can. I mean, it's like a D&D world. It's like tons of source material.
Now I see why you like it.
I love it because I could run a campaign in another part of Suiko world and still be consistent with the games.
And then in 5, they introduced like 2 very intriguing places that they could have settings for future games.
Yeah,
and
I mean,
I'm just worried that they will never see
there's
like
so many one-off
Nagaria
characters
or.
you get in. There's so many one-off characters you meet in the various games who are like, wow, I'm from this other part of the world, and I've got a turban, and I've got a flame sword, and I'm awesome. And you could totally go there and make a story about this guy, or Sergeant Joe in his Duck Town, or the
Duck Town.
that was really my main problem.
I really wanted to like Suikoden 3. When I saw the duck guy, I was like, hey, it's the Mad Mallard from Secret of Mana. That's amazing. I have to play this game, but no.
That was really my main problem with like Tierkreis's like storytelling is like it was actually at its best when it was doing something different from like the other Suikoden games. But when you say, okay, here are the stand-ins for like the Howling Voice Guild, here are the stand-ins for the Scarlet Moon Empire, those sort of things.
Right.
It's like, why couldn't you just make this a Scarlet Moon Empire? Why couldn't you just make this the Howling Voice Guild? There's no reason to have like these knockoffs.
I feel that they could have done a real Suikoden game and still rebooted this franchise.
Yeah, it's entirely possible to work in a world with a lot of depth and at the same time retain some consistency, maintain fidelity to the source material, but not intimidate people. Like make it accessible to newcomers.
Like 12 and then Final Fantasy Tactics 12 and Final Fantasy.
I'm thinking even like the Star Wars movies. Like the prequel movies weren't great, but at the same time they had this really rich universe that they inhabited. And
that had a lot of potential.
Yeah. But I mean, there were still lots of connections. And at the same time, if you went into Star Wars and just watched it for the first time, starting with Phantom Menace, well, you might be a little lost with Phantom Menace. But like you kind of got the idea. I mean, there were lots of kids who watched Star Wars for the first time with Episode 1 and said, "That's awesome."
Right. I mean,
and that's kind of what they want is something that newcomers can come and enjoy, but old timers can still say, "Oh yeah, this is what I love." It's possible to balance those things and not get really, really obsessive about the old details, but at the same time still be faithful.
Well, I mean, you
can
take the heart of the series and make an homage to it, but it's like almost like in Tier Crease, they decided the things that are Suikoden enough to keep the name, or the battles, the music, the multiple character tiers, the weapon type, but not having every character have one weapon, having every character have runes, or like. And the various other things. So it almost feels like they took the flavor out, kept the systems, but not all the systems. And I question why. I mean, I guess it's getting a little RPG wonkery here, but I mean, you see this in tabletop games all the time too, where when a series like Dragonlance is totally based 25 years ago on a system that is 25 years old, and they're trying to bring it to a modern system, what do you keep that's representative of the old series but still fresh and new? And I don't know if what they did in Tier Crease is quite what I would have done if I had been in charge of.
Like, I understand the sentiment of what they're trying to do, but I just think it was a slight misstep. Like, it didn't turn out as horrible as I thought. I was worried about.
I'm going to buy the game. I think it's going to be great.
It's not a bad game, but it's not what like Suikoden fans want.
All right, so let's wrap by you guys telling me what your favorite Suikoden moments ever were. Your crowning moment of awesome from Suikoden, any Suikoden game.
Oh man.
Do you want me to start?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Definitely the battle with Luca Blight in Suikoden II.
Ooh.
It's one of the most intense, amazing boss battles ever. And it's not the final battle of the game. It's like the midpoint of the game. But you take down the big evil villain, and like for once, the boss that you fight actually feels like he deserves all the hype. Like, I mean, you see him, he's an evil bastard throughout the game.
Right to your face.
But he's also like incredibly powerful. And when you actually fight him, he's incredibly powerful. But the thing is, he doesn't transform into a giant monster or anything. He's just a human possessed by magic who kicks ass. And it takes your entire army, all kinds of ambushes and tactics, several encounters, and finally a one-on-one duel that you could very easily lose to take him down. It's like a 30-minute epic battle, and this is in a game where the battles usually take about 30 seconds. It's truly incredible. There's a huge setup for it. You send out, like half of your army to flank him and then the other half to attack while he's distracted.
Oh, we didn't even talk about the castles.
Yeah, the castles, the one-on-one combat, but the battle with Luca Blight really is the centerpiece of Suikoden II, and like I don't know, it's just such an amazing epic battle that it really sticks in my mind even after 10 years.
Oh, I would have to say my favorite moment in Suikoden is definitely the end of the first game, where you're just after you beat the final boss and you're trying to run out of the town and you've still got encounters, the castle is falling, but your two favorite guys, Flick and Victor, sit there and say, you know what, man, go. You got to get out. You've got the kingdom to run. We're going to take care of this crap. And the ending thing says, and Flick and Victor were never seen again, because they sit there and they fight the whole army. The castle's falling down around them. The music is epic. And you're like, you've spent 20 hours with these guys. They're like your brothers. You're just like, don't die. I need you. You're my generals. You're going to be my, second-hand men. But they're like, no, we need you to survive. Our lives aren't worth it. And that to me was like, this is.
But then they come back in Suikoden 2.
Yeah, but still, though, the first time you see that, it just feels epic. It feels like this is a sacrifice they're making for you.
Well, I like how they return in Suikoden 2 because when you first meet them, they don't really like you that much.
Yeah, they
They're
don't
like,
know who you are.
Who's this little rug rat that we've captured? You go work in the salt mines, or like go work in the
Victor's
storeroom
little
and
logo of a
drag
bear.
flour around for us.
No, I'd say, I mean, obviously I'm a little biased, but I think some people have dismissed the later games. My favorite moment is from 5. I'm not going to spoil a lot of the plot, but basically, you go through a lot of the game, wondering what's happened during a specific event in the capital of Felena. And then at one point late in the game, there's a flashback. I think Shiva knows what I'm talking about. And you see what actually happened, and it's really emotional. And that's one part where I think the voice actors did a really good job. I think it captures the feeling of that. And if you haven't played it, and if you want a plot that is emotional that will affect you, definitely play Suikoden 5 because it's the easiest one to find, I think.
Okay,
It's
I guess I'll
fun,
play
man.
Suikoden 5.
That story really did, though. I mean, it was really good.
Yeah.
I have to say, Suikoden 5 story really made me
Yeah,
happy
I don't even
play
want
it.
to spoil anything. If you think Japanese RPG plots suck, which 90% of them do, just play this game. And
It was cool. It was cool.
I think you'll definitely like the plot. It's definitely a lot more intricate than most Japanese RPGs you'll find.
Yeah. It's a lot of fun complexity, a lot of fun plot twists, and trying to figure out who the heroes are and what side are you really on, and who. I mean, the villain's your mother, right? So that's
My mother?
Well,
Well,
Everybody's
sort of. I mean,
mother.
yeah. I mean, again, there are those nuances. Is she really evil or is she not?
Is she misguided? I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
I love that game. I played it when I was in Japan, and it was my only English-speaking friend.
Yeah.
Suikoden 5.
All right, well, thanks guys for coming in and
thank you for having
schooling us on Suikoden because I couldn't have done this on my own. It would have been a very boring, very brief podcast. Suikoden 2 is pretty good. Okay, I'm done. Bye.
The Jeremy Parrish monologues. Oh, dude, Suikoden games, though. You should play them if you can read Japanese. Nash is a cool character.
I tried. Didn't work out so well. Anyway, that wraps it up for this episode. Next episode, it's all about you. I want to know, everyone, just like I asked these guys, I want to know your thoughts, your special memories. Specifically, I want to know about your first gaming memory. That's right. The next episode is all about reader feedback. So write to me, send a private message through the 1UP system, jparish.oneup.com. Send me a private message. Share your thoughts. Share your oldest childhood memories, or, if you started playing as an adult, send me your oldest adult memories, whatever.
So N-Guy's going to send you a message.
What's that?
N-Guy's going to send you a message then.
Is he? That's
Yeah,
awesome.
Didn't he start playing
He
like
started
5 years
gaming in
But he
99.
doesn't game anymore, so I don't know.
Who knows what he's doing. But.
Anyway, yeah, it's going to be a reader feedback episode, and I believe we will have a special guest returning in the house for this episode if all works out properly. So that'll be 2 weeks from now. Send me your thoughts by March 20th, and we will read as many live on the air as we can. It's going to be awesome, I hope. In the meantime, please continue reading 1UP blogs, Retronauts, The Grind, The Tilt.
Yay, the grind.
And I think Ray's supposed to be launching his own blog sometime or another.
He's a rock star now.
He is. He might be above all this, but keep watching. Maybe we'll see something special and amazing from him. I'm your host, Jeremy Parrish, and we're done with this podcast now, so goodbye.
Momento sento qualcosa
Yeah, the game shop where I used to shop in Abilene, Texas. The clerk there always called the game Suikoden. That inspired me to go onto eBay and look up Suikoden, and I found really cheap copies of Suikoden II.
All right.
Written as Sukidon. Suikoden.
Like how much for like $10 instead of like 100?
Yeah, it was like $20.
Really?
That's hot.
That happened a long time ago. Now it has all that auto correction technology, so you can't do that. But yeah, that was a little trick I discovered a long time ago. Suikoden, and also if you hunted for Zedla games,
What's
Zedla, Zedla.
Oh, okay, yeah.
you could get really really great deals from people's typos.
Actually, it works for toys too. I used to get Macross toys that
Marcos.
Yeah, exactly.
No, that was just like Philippine knockoffs.
But they have lots of accessories. All of them are shoes. Hey.